Hello there. I had to bobble and reset everything, and the phone wound up in a slightly different spot, but I'm not going to mess with moving it. It is by 34 minutes, November the 2nd here in Albuquerque. I'm Robert McKay. You saw that the channel is Whiskey for Beginners. And as you may know, if you've been here a little while, I'm rebuilding an entire playlist called Whisky Basics, which I don't know how I did it. I somehow accidentally deleted. I deleted the whole playlist, all 36 videos, with I'd say one click, but I swear I did not click the delete button. Howsoever, it is gone, so I'm rebuilding it. I think it's number 27 or 8, but don't quote me on that. You'll see it when you come to the video. It'll be part of the title. And there are 36 of them all together, and these are just things that I wanted to know when I was new to whiskey and could not find in one place. And that's the whole point of this channel, to help people who are new to whiskey. And I said I wasn't going to move the camera, but I will just there. Now I'm not, at least not so much cutting off my left hand when I gesture. But since this is a whiskey channel, I want to pour some whiskey and drink it while this we stuff, Kimosabi. It's just me. You may be yelling at the screen, but this isn't a conversation. It's me recording a video. And that didn't work as well as I intended. I've gotten to where before I hit the record button, I check everything on the screen and make sure it works. This time I had to reset and I didn't recheck, so things didn't work the way I wanted. This is, and you've seen this one before, Baby Blue. It's from Balcones Distilling in Waco, Texas. It's a corn whiskey, 100% roasted Texas blue corn. Move that back here. I'm slowly learning that instead of just moving side to side, I can also move forward and back and affect what shows on the camera. This is 92 proof, which is 46% alcohol by volume, if that's how you think of things. And this one is aged at least 24 months in oak, it says, which means it's 2 years old, and that means that it is straight corn whiskey. And as far as I know, this is the first straight corn whiskey that Balcones has released. And I'm not going to go into the whys and wherefores of what straight whiskey is. I've already done a video on that. I'm not going to talk about how they age things, what's required for corn whiskey. I've mentioned that here and there in other videos. But what I want to do tonight is ask, and then answer, that being the format, what is hot whiskey? Well, I can tell you one thing. This ain't it. What this is delicious. Now, not everything Balcones makes is delicious. I don't know how they're doing rye now. They've altered the rye they're putting out, or at least altered the labeling and the marketing. But I tried their 100 proof rye way back, I guess probably it was either late 2021 or early 2022. I couldn't stand it. And I found I do like rye now and again, but that bottle was like drinking drinking grass juice. It was just awful. Hot whiskey, it's really a self-explanatory explanation, a self-explanatory explanation. I wonder how many people who might say that would realize what they had said. People do not listen to themselves. The most boring, pretentious, superficial nonsense comes out of their mouths and they just babble on and never notice. But it is kind of self-explanatory, but if you're new to whiskey, you may not be familiar enough with how whiskey behaves in your mouth for it to make much sense to you. Hot whiskey, then, is whiskey that when you take a sip of it, it burns. It feels like there's heat in there. Now there isn't. Well, who knows? Maybe somebody likes to heat his whiskey up to 90 degrees or something. Although alcohol starts to boil at about 172, 174, somewhere around in there. So you have to be careful not to heat it too hot. You don't want to heat it to what we call boiling temperature, 212, or your alcohol is going to vaporize off. But somebody might like to heat the whiskey. There are people who like to put ice in their whiskey, and if that's what you like, if that's what works for you, fine. The best whiskey is the whiskey you like, the way you like to drink it. Howsoever, I don't like my whiskey below room temperature, and contrariwise, I've not tried it, but I don't believe I'd like it above room temperature either. Room temperature is where the flavors and the aromas work best for whiskey, at least for most people who drink whiskey, and certainly for me. Hot whiskey, then, is not a heat of temperature. It's a heat of chemicals. It's a chemical heat. Now, the main component of whiskey is alcohol. By law, you cannot call it whiskey if it's under 80 proof, which is, 40% alcohol by volume. That means that if you have 100 gallons of whiskey at 80 proof, or 40%, of those 100 gallons, 40 gallons will be alcohol. And the other 60 will be other things, mostly water, but various other things as well. Now, alcohol does contribute to the heat of a whiskey. The higher the proof, the more you're going to feel the physical sensation of the alcohol in your mouth. And for that matter, going down. I can feel a hug right now, even though that last sip was a little bit ago. What I set things on here is a slab of marble about yay big, yay long, yay wide, yay thick. It's actually a cutting board, but my wife has it on the table for other things. And there was something, I think, on there that was I felt it when I set the glass down. But there's alcohol, there's water, and then, as I said, there are other things. The flavor comes partly from what they call congeners. Those are chemicals that come through the distillation that bring flavor from the grain. And the higher the proof you bring it off the still, the more of those congeners are out of the alcohol. That's why vodka is essentially flavorless and odorless. They've distilled it to such a high proof there are few, if any, of those congeners left in it. And that's why there are so many flavored vodkas, is that's how you get some flavor in the vodka. But it does make vodka good for mixing if you don't want to drown out the flavor of whatever else you're using. But there are also chemicals that come from the barrel. That's what provide most of the flavor. One of the ways you can tell that a whiskey is young, that it hasn't aged long, is how grain forward it is. How much of the original grain flavor is still in the glass. And some people like a fairly grain forward whiskey. Some people like it perfectly well straight off the still, which is what moonshine almost always is. Whether it's corn liquor, peach brandy, what have you, they make a run of liquor, they jar it up, and or sometimes they'll sell it by the bucket or by the barrel even, a plastic barrel. But it's not aged. It's not been inside a barrel at all, a wooden barrel. And some people like that immediacy of the grain or the fruit or what have you. Grain, of course, for whiskey. I'm trying to think, I believe the very first video in this series it defines whiskey. I know one of the early ones does. But then as it ages in that oak barrel, it picks up other flavors from the wood, which also filters out some of the original grain flavors, some of the congeners, and so you get this combination of what the grain brings and what the wood brings, and they come together and form what we actually are drinking. I'm presuming if you're watching this video, you do drink whiskey. Maybe you don't. I watch videos by the Gentleman's Gentleman's Gazette. Not all of them, but when Preston Schluter, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, I might be wrong, when he does a video, I find it interesting, even though I haven't owned a suit in decades and plan never to own one again. What you see is what you get. This is how I dress. But it's probably safe to assume that you do drink whiskey, or at least are getting into whiskey. So you got the chemicals from the original distillation, you got the chemicals from the wood, they come together and form whiskey. Some of those chemicals, besides the alcohol, impart a sensation of heat. If there are a lot of those chemicals in the whiskey, then it will be hot. If there are fewer, it will be less hot, and on down to where some whiskey, especially at a low proof, will have hardly any alcohol burn at all if you're used to whiskey. If you're not, it may still burn. I have had whiskey up to 132 point something proof. The hottest liquor I've ever had was 120 proof. It was unaged. It came from Sugarlands Distilling Company in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. It's the distillery that Mark Ramsey and Digger Maines from Moonshiners are associated with. And they didn't call it moonshine, and it's not moonshine if it's legal. Moonshine is the stuff you make out in the woods, not in a legal distillery. But they called it, I don't know if I'm going to remember it exactly right, but it was something like Mountain Legacy Corn Liquor, or corn whiskey, something like that. Only 120 proof, and for me, only is the word. For you, if you're just starting out, 80 proof may be plenty. If you're new, do not dive right into 120 proof. But I drink 120 proof regular. And so to me, that's not exceptionally high. But that stuff like to scorch my mouth to charcoal. Whereas the 130 whatever proof that I've had was nowhere near that hot. 120 proof Knob Creek is nowhere near that hot. So the alcohol does contribute, but the other chemicals, by their greater or lesser amount, can raise or lower the heat. Now, after you've been drinking whiskey a while, and maybe as you're watching you've hit that point, I don't know. After you've been drinking whiskey a while, you will come to see that this one is not hot, this one's moderately hot, this one's hot. It's the old joke, the country bumpkin goes to New York City, wants to see Carnegie Hall, and he stops a musician on the sidewalk because he figures the musician knows how to get there. Musicians always want to play Carnegie Hall. He asks the musician, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And the guy says, practice, practice, practice. That joke was old when I was a kid, and I'm 65 now. So it's been around a couple of minutes. A hot minute. Well, I don't want my minutes to be hot nor cold. I just want them to be 60 seconds passing by. I remember when everybody was saying back in the day, my immediate reaction was, back in what day? Which day are you talking about? Me, I say back in the olden days when dinosaurs roamed the earth. When I grew up, the phrase was back in the dinosaur days, and of course that was a long time ago. I don't know when the last dinosaurs died. I know it was after the Ark, but that's a whole nother subject. But this stuff ain't hot at all. I can feel that there's alcohol in there, sure. There's a tingle on the tongue from the alcohol. But what I mainly get from it is the sweetness, a little bit of smokiness, and I haven't been talking about the whiskey tonight. I'm trying to keep my videos shorter than they've been, and egad, I'm already at 18 minutes. Last time I looked, it was 14. I thought, I'm doing good. Well, there went 4 minutes. So, having come to panic point, having explained what hot whiskey is, drinking Texas whiskey, yeehaw!